All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. With the start of the 2023 college football season right around the corner, there are plenty of questions that need to be answered heading into this Pac 12 campaign. We know that this is a swan song for both USC and UCLA in the Pac 12 as they are set to join the Big Ten next year. We just found out last week that Colorado is also leaving the Pac 12 in order to join the Big 12. We just heard today that the Pac 12 commissioner is set to present a new media rights deal to the remaining 9 members as the Pac 12 is looking to survive. Will the Pac 12 as a conference be able to survive? We've got to wait and see. But nonetheless, I think that the action on the gridiron this fall is going to be tremendous in this league. Now, I started by talking about USC. And of course, will the men of Troy be able to win the Pac 12 in their last season there, obviously, before joining the Big Ten? You look back to 2022 for USC and two heartbreaking losses to Utah, one in Salt Lake City and then the other in the Pac-12 championship game out in Vegas, are all that prevented the Trojans from reaching the college football playoff for the first time in school history. USC will take the field this fall with the reigning Heisman Trophy winner at quarterback in Caleb Williams. And we know what this young man can do, as this was his first full year of playing college ball. Remember, he came off the bench the previous year at Oklahoma to take over for Spencer Rattler. But now, everybody around the conference has a feel for Caleb Williams, and there's going to be a lot of people out there gunning for him. And then on top of that, this is a guy that more than likely is going to be the number one pick in next spring's NFL draft. But nonetheless, you got the talent around Caleb Williams on offense for USC and head coach Lincoln Riley. You look at wide receivers Mario Williams and Brendan Rice. You also have an experienced offensive line as you got 4 seniors up front for SC. But the issue is going to be defensively because USC, especially in the passing game, was shredded at times last year. They were 106th in the nation in total defense. They do have 6 seniors starting defensively, and also keep an eye out for senior linebacker Shane Lee. And as USC looks to win the Pac 12 and possibly get to the college football playoff, they have a very tough slate of games included in their schedule. On the 14th of October, they're going to travel to South Bend to take on Notre Dame. They come back home the following Saturday for the rematch with Utah. And like I talked about last week in the top 25, Utah has been a thorn in the side of the men of Troy since joining the Pac 12. A big one on November 4th as USC will welcome Washington to the Coliseum. They then follow that up by a trip to Eugene to take on the Ducks out of Oregon, and then another key game on the 18th of November when they host UCLA in the Crosstown Classic. Now, for the Cal Bears, they were trending upward several years ago, but now they're coming off of 3 consecutive losing seasons. And they were competitive last year, Cal was, as they lost 5 games by a touchdown or less. But Cal's got to be able to find a way to turn those close games into victories this season. One reason, if Cal is going to finish with a winning record, is going to be running back Jaden Ott, who averaged more than 5 yards per carry last year as a freshman. Also, keep an eye out for senior linebacker Jackson Sherman. But it's going to be interesting to see how much improvement the Cal is going to be able to make in a Pac 12 that is expected to be very top heavy this year. You look at UCLA, just like USC, this is their swan song in the Pac 12. But, credit to Chip Kelly, their head coach. He's gotten the Bruins back on track. Each of the last 2 years, UCLA has finished with a winning record. But will they find a way to win the conference? It's something they haven't done in quite some time. It's not going to be easy because there's no more DTR at quarterback. You can expect either freshman Dante Moore or junior Ethan Garbers to get the bulk of the reps this year in this up-tempo offense for Chip Kelly. You got 3 seniors and a grad transfer on the offensive line, and that experience is always important to any football team. And then defensively for the Bruins, you look at senior middle linebacker Darius Muasau, as well as outside linebacker Leatu Latu. I look at cornerback Jalen Davies. He led UCLA last year as a freshman in interceptions with three, and let's see if he's able to build off of that. And one thing that helped UCLA last year was that most of their key games were at the Rose Bowl last year. They didn't have to travel. This year is going to be a little bit different. They have to travel to the Rice Eccles to take on Utah on the 23rd of September. They got to travel to Corvallis on October 14th, and that's never an easy game against Oregon State. And then in November, traveling across town to take on the USC Trojans. Now, you look at Oregon, and last year was a smooth transition for the Ducks from head coach Mario Cristobal to Dan Lanning. As Oregon lost their first game of the season when they were run off the field by Georgia, but then they came back to finish 10-3. They were right in the mix to win the Pac-12, but late season losses to Washington and Oregon State hindered that. But the expectations to me are through the roof this year for this Oregon team, as they have what it takes to win the Pac-12. You look at quarterback Bo Nix; he has the potential to be a first-round pick in next spring's NFL draft. But this Ducks team can run the football effectively with both Bucky Irving and Noah Whittington. Keep an eye out for wide receiver Troy Franklin, as he'll play off of that running game for the Ducks, as well as junior outside linebacker Jeffrey Bassa. Overall, the Ducks have 8 seniors on the defensive side of the ball, and I think this defensive unit for Oregon can be one of the better defenses in the Pac-12. On the 9th of September, we're going to see the Ducks travel out of conference to take on the Texas Tech Red Raiders out of the Big 12. A big one on the 14th is they're going to travel to Seattle to take on the Washington Huskies. And remember, Washington went up to Eugene last year and got the best of the Ducks. On the 28th of October, Oregon rather will be traveling to Rice Eccles to take on the Utah Utes. They host USC on November 11th, and then they host Oregon State in the Civil War on the 24th of November. And speaking of those Washington Huskies, they were a pleasant surprise last year in the Pac-12. They got a chance to do something special again under head coach Kalen DeBoer, as this team is loaded. Michael Penix Jr. decided to return for one more year in school, and this is another of those stud quarterbacks that the Pac-12 has this season. Keep an eye out for junior running back Cameron Davis, and then the wide receivers. I'm talking about Rome Odunze, excuse me, and Jalen McMillan. And then defensively for the Huskies, keep an eye out for edge rusher Braylon Trice, as well as outside linebacker Alfonso Tuputala. So I look at it like this. For Washington, this is a team that a lot of people around the Pac-12 aren't going to want to face, because they could be scary good. On the 2nd of September, they host Boise State. On the 16th of September, they're going to travel to East Lansing to take on Michigan State. And remember, this was a game to me that kind of got things rolling for the Huskies last year when Michigan State came to Seattle and Washington dominated them. The big one I just talked about on the 14th of October when they host Oregon. They're at USC on the 4th of November, and then they host Utah on the 11th of November, which could be another key game. And then they finish up in the Apple Cup with Washington State. For Stanford, this is the dawn of a new era for their football program. For the first time since 2010, David Shaw will not be leading the Cardinal on the field as their head coach, as in steps Troy Taylor. As after posting a 30-8 mark at Sacramento State, he's now going to give Division I football a try. But for Taylor, he's going to be starting from the bottom, as he's taken over a program in Stanford that has not had a winning season since 2018, and they only won one game within the Pac-12 last year. The Cardinals are just going to be a work in progress. And like I said, it's so top heavy, for the Pac-12, that I think the Stanford's going to get lost in the wash. How much will Arizona improve this year? In 2021, on the Jetfish, the Wildcats were only able to win a game. Last year, we saw some improvement as they went 5-7. But this time around, can they do enough to get bowl eligible for the first time since 2017? You have junior quarterback Jaden DeLara, who has plenty of reps under his belt. Also, keep an eye out for senior running back Michael Wiley, as well as wide receiver Jacob Cowing, because Arizona was sixth in the nation last year in passing, and that's one thing they can do. They can definitely sling the football around in the desert. A very tough schedule for Arizona. On the 9th of September, they're going to travel to take on Mississippi State. On the 30th of September, they host Washington. On the 7th of October, they're at USC, which is then followed the following Saturday by a trip to Pullman to take on Washington State. On the 28th of October, Arizona will host Oregon State. On the 4th of November, they'll host UCLA, and then they host Utah on November 18th. So you got a tough slate of games right there for the Wildcats. For Colorado, this is a transition year and a year of high expect or let me rephrase that, not high expectations, but expectations period, as there's finally some hope for this program that was once upon the elite of college football. You go back about 25, 30 years ago, Colorado was a consistent top 10 team, but they have really fallen on hard times. They've only had one winning season since 2006, and now they're hopeful that the arrival of Deion Sanders as their head coach will change things. Obviously, this is also a transition year for Colorado due to the fact that they're set to leave the Pac 12 to go back to the Big 12. But we've seen a complete roster overhaul in Boulder under Deion Sanders. And one position to keep an eye on is going to be the quarterback. And of course, Deion's son, Shador. How will he transition to playing in the Pac 12 after being at Jackson State? We've got to wait and see. One game that I'm focused on for Colorado is their first game of the season when they travel to Fort Worth and take on TCU. Not because this is going to be a conference game for Colorado next year. No, it's due to the fact I want to see how much juice this team plays with under their new head coach, Deion Sanders, and of course, the big roster overhaul over there. So let's see what the Buffs have in store here in 2023. Now, for Oregon State, over the last 5 years, they've continued to improve under head coach Jonathan Smith. And last year, we saw the Beavers win 10 games for the first time since 2006. But will the Beavers find a way to take that next step in order to win the Pac 12? You've got former Clemson quarterback DJU, who is transferred out west, and he's looking to help an Oregon State passing game that was 105th in the nation last year. Now, last year as a freshman, we saw running back Damian Martinez average more than 6 yards per carry. So let's see if he could avoid that dreaded sophomore slump. We've got to wait and see. For Utah, the two-time defending Pac-12 champions, they're looking to make it three in a row. And for me, I really feel that Kyle Whittingham, their head coach, does not get the recognition for the job that he does because he does so much and he doesn't get those 4 and 5 star recruits to his program in Salt Lake City. He gets a lot of kids that are overlooked. He develops them in his system and he consistently sends players to the National Football League. Utah is going to have more than a puncher's chance as long as they can keep quarterback Cam Rising healthy. One of the best dual threats at quarterback in the country. He's very tough. He plays like a running back, and he's also tough to bring down for opponents. We saw Brent Keithy at tight end last year get injured as the Utes were going with the two tight ends along with him and Dalton Kincaid. And Keithy's looking to return from that ACL injury. And if he's healthy, I think it's only going to be a shot in the arm for this Utah offense. Keep an eye out for junior safety Cole Bishop as well as junior linebacker Kareem Reed. And for Utah, a very interesting schedule. They host Florida on the 31st of August. So 1 month from today, they're at Baylor. At one point this season, they will also host UCLA in late September. And that was a game that Utah lost last year when they went to the Rose Bowl. They're at Oregon State 6 days after that. They're at USC on the 21st of October. And remember, this was the team that knocked off USC twice last year and kept them out of the running for the college football playoff. A big one at home versus Oregon on the 28th. And then they're at Washington on November 11th. You look at Arizona State, this is another team, transition years. They're going to a new head coach in Kenny Dillingham, and he inherits a Sun Devils team that only won 2 games within the Pac 12 last season. Just like it is at Stanford, he's going to be starting from the ground up. So the talent is really not there for Arizona State this year, and it's one of those where I think they could possibly get caught up in the wash. That will be the Pac-12 as well. And finally, there's Washington State, and the Cougars are definitely looking to be a force in the Pac-12. And I look at junior quarterback Cam Ward as being an impact player for this team, as well as senior running back Nakia Watson. But I think Washington State is going to be good enough to beat the teams that they're supposed to beat. But those upper echelon teams, that's going to be the problem. So I think at the end of the day, when you're looking at the Pac 12 race this year, I think it comes down to Utah, it comes down to USC, it comes down to Oregon, and it comes down to Washington. These were the top four teams in the Pac 12 last year. And I think they're going to once again be the top four teams in the Pac 12 because all of them are returning the same starting quarterback that they had last season. Of course, SC went 8-1 within the conference, while Washington, Oregon, and Utah all went 7-2. So those head-to-head meetings this fall are going to be so important as far as the race to get to Las Vegas for the championship game. But when it's all said and done, I think the Pac 12 championship game is going to come down to USC and Oregon. And when it's all said and done, I'm going to give the Ducks the nod to win the Pac 12 this season. I think this is a team that is going to be dangerous all season long. I think Dan Lanning doesn't get the credit that he deserves for being a solid head coach. I know he just has 1 year under his belt, but I think the Ducks are on the verge of doing something very special under Dan Lanning. And with that said, I'm going to take Oregon to win the Pac 12 this year. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now, you can check it out, drop a line, and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So, once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I am signing off. And I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.